we got it and don't know what to do with it, but military never used them. Here's one, it's a commercial airliner, it's called a Martin 404. Notice the engine on the east side there, being on a right wing. That's a no-no. Guy called us up from Sheridan, Wyoming. You want a Martin 404? I got one if you want it. Yeah, but how much? Oh no, it's free. A free Martin 404? Yeah, it's been sitting out in my field. I was going to use it as a crop duster. Well, it was a crop duster. It was a commercial airliner. And then it kind of transported illicit drugs. Well, we'll forget about that one. So it was a, yeah, okay. Not the guy in Sheridan, Wyoming before he got it. So I said, it's been sitting in my yard. I don't want it anymore. How much? Free. Come get it. Okay. Whoa. So we just happened to have a pilot and a flight engineer and all the other people and sent him up to Sheridan, Wyoming. That's a long trip. They stayed there for about 4 days, couldn't even get the fuel lines clean. Came back to Tucson. About a month later, we grabbed some more parts and stuff and went back up to Sheridan. It's not running yet, gang. Came back to Tucson. Another couple months go by, we went back up with more stuff. Didn't fly yet. Fourth time they went up to Sheridan. Same 5 guys, engineer, pilot, co-pilot, and electrician. They went up to Sheridan, Wyoming. Well, guess what? It runs. Finally, they taxied it down the runway, or his street, or whatever it was. It wasn't a very big runway. So they said, okay, turned it around, came back to the other end of the runway where the wind was coming in from the west, put the pedal to the metal, and down she went, all the way down the runway. Running really smooth. Well, they got her airborne, and that's about it. Got her airborne, stayed about, maybe 6,000–7,000 feet above the ground. Then there was this giant hole in the ground called the Grand Canyon. Oh, I hope we get over it. Well, they did. They made it over the Grand Canyon. The airplane's running fine. Chuck Osborne was behind the wheel driving this airplane. Got over a little town called Winslow, Arizona. You might have heard that little town. There was a very large bang. What happens if that happens to you in your Chevy going down the street? The piston comes out of the engine, either blows a hole in the hood or comes down in the street, oil's coming out, and it just made a mess. You got to stop. Well, with one engine, he made it to the Winslow, Arizona airport. Called us up. You did what? Yeah, it blew a jug, the piston, in that cylinder that holds the piston, somewhere up in northern Arizona. We did hear that it was actually found by some. She was on Maui, December the 7th, 1941. There were 11 of these airplanes at Pearl, and the military was kind of goofy in that period of time. They parked them all in a row, boom, 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 just like that, like dominoes. And that's exactly how they fell. Yeah, when the Japanese made a couple of runs right down all 11 of these airplanes, they were just mush by the time they were done. This lady, not in this color, commercial airliner, was on Maui. About 4 years later, she was transferred to a long-range commercial airliner. A guy named Howard Hughes used to fly in this particular airplane. He sent his TWA folks down here when we first got this. They repainted it, made it look real pretty. The little red cart down there is the starter cart, and behind it is the luggage cart. Anybody fly TWA in the 40s? 50s, that'll work. Check the luggage cart. I think I saw your name on it. Oh dear. The big airplane back here in the back is a B-52. We have 2 of them back here. One is an early model, the D model. It's got the very tall tail back here. That's the kind I used to play with many, many years ago. The one with the tail chopped off there in the front is from Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. It's called the G model. The H models are what we're flying today, which is just buy a new Corvette every year. A model, B model, C model. The big guy over here on your left side is a C Cargo 141, the Star Lifter. This is a 2nd generation airplane. They put this thing on the top, right above the cockpit. That's where he can pull up under a tanker. The tanker can stick his boom in that little bump up there and transfer about 1,200 gallons in 1 minute. Yeah. when they came to Yokota Air Base back in the 60s when I was there, we had to send 4 trucks, that's 20,000 gallons of fuel, fill up a 141, send it back to the world. Now they just call up the tanker and say, I can meet you at such and such a longitude and latitude, and I'll just be there waiting for fuel. The little United States Air Force aircraft here, 489 is a VIP aircraft. That's the kind that Burt Rutan was trying to get the market on. Well, guess what? Lockheed beat them. This one was used by Lady Bird Johnson, President Johnson's wife. When she wanted to go to the ranch in Texas, that's the airplane she would fly in, that airplane right there. It would leave, wasn't for him, it was for her. Doesn't have all this stuff in it that presidents need. So that's a VIP airplane. Little guy over here on your right, 410, it's called an F-7F Tiger Cat. She missed World War II was over. And about a minute and a half after that, this thing pulled in. Well, darn it, we missed the whole war. Okay, Navy had it. No, I don't want it anymore. It's not good for carrier landings, so they gave it to the Marines as a ground attack airplane. What came after World War II? Korea. Great night fighter. Over here on your left is another commercial airliner that the military adopted. This is called a C-54. Cargo 54. 2 presidents had this type of airplane as their Air Force One airplane, but they never were called Air Force One. That's a Kennedy thing, Eisenhower thing. This one, a guy named Gale Halverson used to fly into Tempelhof during the Berlin airlift. He and his crews that flew in there, was an airplane touch the ground or leave every 3 minutes. So you got one coming in, one going out, one coming in, one going out. And they're the people that actually prevented all those German folks from suffering down in Tempelhof in Berlin. The 181 here on your right, the blue airplane, actually these were commercial airliners. We sold them to Britain first because Brits didn't have any bombers. They got in World War II before us. This particular airplane was a military, U.S. military aircraft living out on the Aleutians, way out there. You know where the date line has a crook in it. Yeah, one of my favorite places. But she could reach the Japanese homeland from little islands, Attu, Agatu, and Dutch Harbor, and all those neat little islands are just rocks sticking out of the water. She was a very capable airplane. She has guns, rockets, bombs. Actually, when she terrorized the Japanese homeland and ran out of ammunition, she'd turn tail and go, and would actually outrun a Japanese Zero in level flight. Pretty guy over, pretty, like a little sourpuss over here, but this is an airplane that lived in World War II and Korea. We even used them in Vietnam, picking the pilots out of the water. They didn't like to land in the jungle, they didn't like to land in the desert, in the mountains. I'll try to get this thing out in the ocean. Send me an albatross. That's an albatross. One of our board members, you know, we have a board of governors and all that stuff, has one of these. It's pretty blue and white. Notice where the sponsons are, though, the little green or the yellow things on the end of the wings. Well, when he lands, it's kind of a little rough, so instead of flipping the airplane over, the sponsons make it stop. Okay, it's also a nice place to hook your, well, the guys and his wife actually push a button, and the sponsons come down on a wire. He's got an anchor thrown out, so he's not going anywhere. So why does the whole thing come down? Because that's where he stores his jet ski. Opens the door on the other side, jumps in a little raft, pushes the button. The one on the left side there comes down first. He lets his wife go over there, tie up his little raft. The little thing, the jet ski's sitting on the water, just bobbing around. She jumps in hers, sends the raft back. Her husband comes around this side of the airplane, jumps on his jet ski, hooks up his raft, go out and have fun. Whoa, overkill. C-130s, here's a C-130 that came in the mid-1950s. Today they're still making C-130s. I don't know anything that airplane can't do except go supersonic. The little guy under the wing, here's a drone. You've heard about a lot of drones in the last years or so. over in the desert. Well, they do everything from recording noises to providing altitude readings for airplanes. They take pictures of sites that need to be bombed. They're just full of stuff. But you launch them off a C-130. This particular one used to take pictures of a Chinese power plant. Not a nuclear plant, just a regular water kind of thing. And she survived. Yeah, she would fly in, take pictures, turn around and come back out. And actually turn the engine off. Parachute would come out and they'd pick it up in the ocean. Pretty clever. C-130 here, notice the skis? These are called snowbirds, or icebergs, depending on where they are. And they're always either in the Arctic or the Antarctic. Their job, saving people's lives, bringing in food and stuff for the people that work up in the Arctic and Antarctic. You might remember Dr. Jerry Nielsen, about 10 years ago. She passed away, but she was given another 10 years of good life because she was stuck down in Antarctica with breast cancer. C-130s from Schenectady, New York, went down and got her. Pretty cool. Over here on not the best looking airplane in the world, but the big guy, 940 NASA, that's a Guppy. It's actually a Super Guppy. I'll tell you more about what they do after a while. Coming up shortly. This big lady over here is called a C-133, a 133. Notice the wheels are totally out of the circumference of the airplane. So there's no bumps inside, just a nice tube. You could put the complete Titan missile in that airplane and take it anywhere in the world. Take the fuel out, the oxidizer, and take the weapon out, and I'll take it anywhere in the world. Yep, worked. Here's a little Goonie bird here on your left side. This one actually flew in the canal zone. It's a VIP aircraft, not like the old Goonie birds of World War II. If anybody was from Chicago and you ever flew out of Chicago Airport down to Rantoul, Urbana, where Chanute Air Force Base was, they were a nice flying airplane. Absolutely. That's the ones that the U.S. jumped out of after they crossed over the beaches there at Normandy and went inland. The 1st Army Corps jumped out of those Goonie birds. Here's one over here, 4505. It's kind of a controversial airplane because it's the one that actually defoliated. They killed all the stuff in Vietnam, including people. Yeah, you know, the airplanes would fly wingtip to wingtip, about 25 or 30 airplanes across. Spray would come out, and it was like spraying for mosquitoes back in my old hometown when you get sick after you rode your bicycle through that stuff. But you really got sick. 3 movies using one of these airplanes. It's C-120, C-1, it's called the Packet. No, it's not. It's called something else. Forget it. Anyhow, 123 Provider. I thought about Mel Gibson. Now that really shakes up my mind, right? C-123 Provider. The airplane originally came out as a glider. Don't want to put engines on it, which is a problem because where are you going to put fuel in a glider? Well, they put it in the black part behind the engine. That's also scary because that's where the exhaust pipe is. Fuel and... But Mel Gibson's movie was called Air America. He hauled everything from guns to goats. Next one was a guy named Nicolas Cage. Was in prison. They stole one of these airplanes. He crashed his into the big guitar in Las Vegas. The third one you guys ought to get. Dumbo Drop. Remember that? Dumbo Drop. What's Dumbo? An elephant. Down in India they were having trouble because the elephants were being poached. They're being killed for their tusks. We got to get these elephants out here. So they called one of these airplanes. And they actually loaded elephants in the airplane and flew over the good guys' country and took the elephants out on parachutes. It's called Dumbo Drop. Don't forget that. I get a royalty every time you watch that movie. I get $25. You believe that? I got a ranch for you. Anyhow, it's a good movie. The other two are, you know, yucky. The big guy over here, C-124 Globemaster gasoline engines, can fly for about 4,000 miles. Just a little higher than our mountains are over there. Our mountains are 9,000 feet off the ground, and the 124s can fly at about 12 to 13,000 feet. Or everybody, 200 paratroopers would have to have oxygen masks like they do in your airplanes. That's not feasible. Just fly it low. So that's where all the turbulent air is up there. That's why they call the roll shaky. The aircraft, the two aircraft here live on carriers. 197 is called an S2F. S is for search, 2 is just the chronological order, and the S2F was for, she's out looking for bad guy airplanes. The other one, or excuse me, this one is looking for submarines. The second one's looking for airplanes. So he's got radar in the top. So this S2F, her buddy would have been called a S2F with a roof, because they called the first one a stoof. It's just, I don't know why they did it. So this would have been a stoof with a roof. It's actually caught a flying saucer many years ago, but they don't have the right screwdrivers to open it up. Dumbo drop. Better than this. B-29 right in front of us here. It's a B-29 on steroids. Can you imagine that? Remember the Karate Kid? Wax on and wax off? We had 20, 30 people out here trying to clean this up, and they painted it with a clear coat. This was a tanker. It was a fuel transfer vehicle. The pod on the outboard wing, center body, and the other outboard wing has a hose. On the end of a hose is what looks like a very large badminton shuttlecock. You've seen those, right? Schwack, they hit them. They don't fly fast. But if you can picture that hose coming out about 50 feet, then a giant 36-inch badminton shuttlecock out there, that little number 88 up on the front that had that pipe sticking out the nose, that would stick her nose in the shuttlecock, 1, 2, 3, and get about 300 gallons a minute. Boeing was pretty smart. This was a bomber. This is the kind of airplane that dropped the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Can fly at 40,000 feet. If you've ever seen pictures of the guys blowing up Tokyo from high altitudes, they're in their t-shirts. It's pressurized. Let's make a civilian airliner out of it. They did. And the other two, you see Bal Air back there with the red cross on it. The bottom, you see the crease just at the propeller line or the wing line. It's a little circle, then a big circle. Well, that's the C-97, or the cargo 97 that they made out of B-29s. Here's our big tanker, the KC-135. It's a Boeing 707 on steroids. It has a pipe in the back where he can discharge at least 600 gallons in 1 minute. Medium, about 1,200 gallons if you're flying a Galaxy or a 141 or some big airplane. If they had to dump the fuel, they could dump the fuel at about 1,200 gallons a minute. Of course, there's going to be a heck of a fire coming out the back of this thing. That was our beginning job as a tanker. To lower that boom down, the pilot would fly the other airplane up underneath it and get a lot of fuel. Well, the Strategic Air Command said, I don't need another tanker, we got plenty of them. This was an electronics warfare aircraft. She had a general officer on board 24/7, 365 through the Cold War. And her other job was to take care of the President of the United States. Just in case Air Force One, something happened, this guy was always pretty close. Yeah. Don't have to have a pretty airplane to save the President. Over here's another unusual airplane voted by the A-10 drivers as the least attractive airplane out here, the Fairey Gannet. The Gannet was with the gray on the top and one little bubble up there. She fought in the Falklands War down in Argentina. When the war was over, the Brits got rid of their carrier. She did not have a home. Oh darn. Took all the electronics off of that Gannet. It has a jet engine with counter-rotating propellers. Well, carrier-borne airplane is not worth a thing if you don't have a carrier. Took all the electronics off that Gannet. Put them up here in this big airplane with the dark gray colors here and the spark plug on top. So instead of having a carrier-based airplane, you have a long-ranged aircraft up here on the right. And that's not a spark plug. We'll tell you about that in a minute. In the middle there, A-10, she was an aircraft that would be out saving lives. When the pilots got shot down in Vietnam, they pick up their radio, call Sandy, I'm down, I need help. That's Sandy. Saved a lot of pilots' lives. For you guys and gals, if you want to be an astronaut, I got an airplane for you right over there. This airplane actually was made a little stronger. If you look at the back, well, you see the number there in the blue stripe. Look towards the left, you'll see how it's got ridges in it. They were strengthening rods. Strengthening rods in a hollow padded tube. What? This one, this is where all the astronauts learned about zero gravity. She's called the Weightless Wonder. Pilot gets in the airplane, he's got all the brand new astronauts sitting up in the back, just above the wing there in the nice big comfortable seats, and he takes off and he goes up to about 40,000 feet. That's pretty high, 40,000 feet, a little above where you fly in a commercial airliner. So the pilot will then tell all the astronaut students, all right, unbuckle, move to the back of the aircraft. So they all get up, and this is really cool, you know, there's no windows in here. Gosh, what is this? Then the pilot says, okay, have fun. He drops the nose and comes roaring towards the ground. Then on a roller coaster, you get about 1 to 1.5 seconds of weightlessness. Maybe your purse will come up and hit you in the nose. It just floats, right? Well, can you imagine doing that for 15 to 20, 25 seconds? You're throwing people from one end of the airplane to the other. You got water coming up to the ceiling. Your pencil is spinning across the airplane.